Driven by political instability and pressures from the Huns, the Gothic tribes of Germania launched an invasion into the Roman Empire. The Goths, comprised of Visigoths and Ostrogoths, sought refuge and opportunities within the empire's borders. Their migration was driven by a desire for land, resources, and protection from the encroaching Huns. From the 4th century to around 476 CE, numerous Gothic and nomadic tribes had invaded Hispania. These Germanic tribes were mostly Suevi in the northwest, and the Alans in the far west, and the Vandals in the southwest. It was in the year 410 that the Visigoths, under the leadership of King Alaric, made his mark on history. They initially settled in the various regions, including Gaul, modern-day France, in 418 CE, before their journey eventually brought them to Hispania. The Vandal Goths had left Hispania and went to North Africa, leaving the Suevi in control in 439. The Goth tribes became too much for the Roman Empire that was struggling to keep its head above water. The Roman Emperor, Avitus, had elicited the help of the Visigoths in the year 456. He gave them permission to invade Hispania, and around this time, the Visigoths established a foothold in Hispania, rapidly expanding their influence across the region. They had forged alliances with the Roman authorities, taking control of territories in the southwest, such as Bactria and Lusitania. 10 years later, they lost control due to the Gallo-Roman Revolution led by Aegidius. Meanwhile, the Ostrogoths ventured further east into Italy, eventually establishing their own kingdom under Theodoric the Great. However, for the purpose of this episode, our focus remains on the Visigoths and their reign in Hispania. The Visigothic rule in Hispania endured for several centuries, leaving a lasting impact on the region's political, cultural, and religious landscapes. Their reign was characterized by a blend of Roman administrative structures and Gothic customs. Early Visigothic Hispania, the territories, had a tumultuous rule. Thorismund was murdered by his younger brother Theodoric II in 453, after only 2 years of rule. And Theodoric II was murdered by his younger brother Euric in 466, after 14 years of rule. Theodoric II conquered more of Spain in his rule, while Euric defeated the Roman Hispania in Tarraconensis. The Visigoths, like many Germanic tribes, practiced Arian Christianity, a distinct branch of the faith that differed from Nicene Christianity that was embraced by the Roman Empire. This religious difference caused a lot of tensions and divisions within the Christian communities of Hispania, particularly because the Romans were Catholic by this point, while the Visigoths were Arian. The Arian Christian Visigoths started their persecution of the Catholics in Hispania in 472. Alaric II led the Visigoths from 484 to 507, but was killed in battle with the Franks and the Burgundian alliance in Gaul. Alaric II's illegitimate son, Gesalic, was killed by the Ostrogoths, led by Theodoric the Great. That was Alaric II's father. They put the younger son, Amalaric, as a puppet king, and he had ruled from 511 to 531. Theodoric wanted his grandson in Gaul and his grandson in Spain to unite the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths and create a great Gothic empire, but this failed when he died in 526. The Goths were far from being united. They faced multiple fights against the Franks and the Byzantine Empire. Theodos had ruled from 531 to 548, and then he was murdered after failing to defeat the Byzantines in Africa. Agila I ruled from 549 to 554 and faced a brutal civil war. This is when Emperor Justinian, the emperor of the Byzantine Roman Empire, had intervened. Agila I's successor, Athanagild, had fought the Byzantines but could not defeat them in southern Spain, so he had made peace with them. This area that the Byzantines had ruled is around the same region that the Romans had ruled after the Second Punic War. The tension between the Hispano-Romans and the Visigoths only increased, cementing the notion among the Hispano-Romans that the Visigoths were invaders and occupiers. This all had changed when Leovigild started to rule from the year 568 until the year 586, and he had unified Hispania during this time and wrote into law that the Visigoths and the Romans have equal rights, and he had given them the right to intermarry. a practice which was banned by the Visigoths in the 4th century. This rapidly changed society in Hispania, as now the Romans, or the Hispano-Romans, could marry the Visigoths. Before the Goths, the people had mostly adopted the Roman culture that was prevalent after the Roman conquests. Most of the Iberian and Celtic tribes slowly faded away as their cultures and languages were overtaken by the Romans. The Visigoths had considered themselves above the locals, therefore treating them as lower class, until Leovigold's reforms. Soon enough, Leovigold defeats the Suevi kingdom in 584 and subdues the Basques and Cantabrians in the northeast of Spain. Leovigild was Arian, and he had forced local Romans to convert from Catholicism to Arianism. His oldest son, Hermenegild, had converted to Catholicism and revolted against his father. To prevent further problems in the kingdom after Leovigild, King Recared I, who had ruled from 586 to 602, converted himself to Catholicism. Recared had allowed Jews to seek converts through missionary work and to participate in the slave trade. Catholicism started to become the major denomination of Hispania. Isidore of Seville, San Isidoro, the Catholic bishop between the years 600 to 636, had even made deference to the Visigoths instead of to Rome. Although he had promoted the study of Hebrew and Greek, he was very anti-Jewish and tried to urge the Visigoth kings to persecute the Jews. Some accounts insisted that he had hated the Jews and was, as they quote, a Jew-hater. Visigoth dukes and governors had inherent civil and military rule over the different regions of Hispania. The Visigoths ruled Ceuta, or Ceuta in Morocco, after they had taken it from the Byzantines. Little is known about the life of the Visigoths in 7th century Hispania because there aren't sufficient documentation discussing its society. What is clear is that the Visigoths eventually integrated the society together. The reforms put in place by kings Chindaswinth and Recaswinth between the years 642 to 672 had eliminated any distinctions between the Visigoths and the Hispano-Romans, merging them into a unified people. The church began to gain power when the bishops and the nobles controlled the Visigoth king, King Erwig. His successor, Egica, had severely persecuted the Jews, and he had fought the revolt led by the bishops who weren't happy that they couldn't control him or influence him like his predecessor. After his death, King Witiza, who had ruled from 687 to 710, took full power of Hispania in 702, when he was only 17 years old, after his father had died. It is uncertain exactly whether King Witiza was killed in a coup led by Roderick, or if he had died a natural death. But after his death, the kingdom was divided between Roderick and Aquila. King Roderick had held the majority, and this is where we find the Visigoth kingdom of Hispania, before Tariq bin Ziyad crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into El-Andalus.